Hey everyone, I'm Larry Taylor, spiritual director with the unstuckspirit.com. I've been a pastor for many years, and I was a hospital chaplain for many years. Um, and I've been a counselor for many years. And one of the things that I run into, or pretty regularly, and have run into regularly over the years, is um, people with a distorted view of God. Um, and in fact, sometimes I have, even in the midst of a counseling situation, asked people to describe God to me. Uh, I particularly like to do that when someone says, I don't believe in God. Sometimes I will respond to that by saying, well, tell me about this God you don't believe in. And invariably, they describe a God that I don't believe in either, a God that I don't believe exists. They describe a monster. They describe a judgmental, strict, harsh kind of God. Um, and even as you read the Bible, you can come out with a distorted view of God because sometimes God appears very differently in the Old Testament than in the New Testament. So, how do we sort this out? If there is a God, what is God like? I think that's an important question. um, we could go into, yes, God exists, and what's the evidence for that? We can do that at another time. But let's assume that you would grant that God probably does exist. And if that's the case, then what's God like? Well, the answer to the question, in my mind, is that God is exactly like Jesus. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. At one point, one of his disciples said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and then we'll be satisfied. And Jesus said, have I been with you for all this time, and yet you don't know me? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Jesus said, I do always those things which please the Father. So if you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. And if you look carefully at Jesus, look at the way Jesus acts, listen to the things that Jesus says, watch what Jesus does in the Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Pay particular attention to the things he says. In some Bibles, those things are in red letters, which makes it even easier to see, to recognize when it is that Jesus is speaking. And what we will discover, if we do that, is that God is perfect, self-sacrificial love. That love culminates on the cross, where we see Jesus in agonizing physical pain, looking down at the very people who were torturing him to death unjustly and saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiving his enemies in the midst of being tortured to death. Giving his life a sacrifice for others. Serving others rather than lording over others. What is God like? God is love. God is accepting. God is affirming. God cares for you tenderly. God has created you to be a marvelous creation in your own right, with the capacity to love and be loved. God is with you. He wants to help you. He wants to lift away all the shame that you may be carrying around, all the fears and all the anxieties and all the baggage, and he wants to heal those old childhood hurts that we each have. And he wants to show you the path of perfect, self-sacrificial, cruciform love. If you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. A lot of us who have been to churches, a lot of people who grew up in churches, did not come out with that view of God. And that's a shame. If you're one of them, I encourage you to seek out spiritual direction. Part of the process, you'll probably discover just how beautiful God is and how very much God loves you. And you'll probably also discover how beautiful you are. God bless you.